right, calling the first board meeting of 2022 to order. I'd like to thank everyone for attending. And just as a reminder, we are live streaming this and recording it. First off, I'd like to welcome the new members to our board, Mr. John Arguelles and Bob Brunetti. Welcome, guys. I don't remember getting an ovation when I got. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting? Okay, it's been moved in second to approve the meeting minutes from December 15th. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call a vote. All in favor? I see Steve's hand, so motion passes 7-0. The next item is, I believe, is that? Oh, special meeting minutes. I don't have. Okay, let's have a motion to approve the special meeting minutes. Sorry. Pat? It's moved in second to accept the minutes from their special meeting, which is the one that was immediately following the last board meeting. Any discussion? Okay, we'll call for a vote. All in favor? Motion approved, 7-0. Next item is a list of the newly appointed people to the advisory committees. So first of all, I'd like to thank everybody that applied, and especially those that were selected. Mr. Secretary, would you mind reading the list of new people by committee? It's up on here too. Sorry, I should have notified you of this before.
Well, that's all right, but yeah, and you just assume that I can see, but
yeah.
Okay. For the ACC, we have Maureen Bile, we have Richard Beal, and Richard Koenig, or is it an R? Cornick. Okay. Communications, George Kern, Annette Schmidt, and Steve Trudnick. I think Annette is re-upping, and Steve is, and George and Steve is coming from ACC. And then finance, James Devers, a 1-year term. Carol DeStein and Richard Rick Webb for finance. Golf is Howard Higby, who laid out a year. Rose is re-upping. Government Affairs, John Balcom, who is reapplied. Mike Lynch and Mike Polson. And then Long Range Planning is Dominic Andrena. Tom McChrystal, serving a 1-year term. Roger Forsythe and Barry Sherman. And Marinas is John Farron and Bill Cope. Public Services, Ken Heisman, who also moved over from ACC. Recreation, Nancy Diamato, Pam Green, and Holly Sisquine. And just let me explain. Some committees request a 1-year term because of some special project they have or some issue, or maybe replacing somebody that served 2 with 1 year left, and that's why there's 1. Typically, they're 3-year terms on a rotation.
Okay, thank you. And thank everybody again for stepping up and volunteering. As everybody knows, this community runs on volunteers, so we certainly appreciate everybody that gets involved. Next on the agenda is the 2022 board election calendar, and Rick, turn it over to you.
On January 14th, the TVPOA Board Election Committee met and by a vote of 3-0 approved the election calendar that you see in your board books. The committee consists of myself, Bob Brunetti, and Steve Schneider, and we make the motion to accept the 2022 TVPOA Board Election Calendar as recommended by the Board's Election Committee.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the Board Election Committee calendar. Any discussion? Good. Call for a vote. All in favor? 7-0. The next item on the agenda is to ratify the vote that we took electronically to purchase the entrance property at Kahiti. So this happened pretty quickly after our last meeting. So the board voted on it electronically, and we're here today to ratify that vote.
Can you explain to the people that may not understand how we go about taking an electronic vote and why it's done this way? Rick can.
Yeah.
Rick is the king of
Okay,
electronic
we'll
voting.
let Rick do that.
So
Yeah.
the board will often, in between meetings, vote electronically on issues that arise that are important and that need to be resolved by the board between meetings. The bylaws state that any electronic vote must be ratified in the next meeting. So that's why we're here today.
So as you may recall, the board did approve Winston and his team to negotiate on the property. And so all we're doing at this point is basically approving the purchase.
And I'd just add one additional point in the bylaws. Any vote that's taken outside of a meeting requires unanimous consent.
So in other words, when you call for an electronic vote, 7 people have to agree on that electronic vote.
Right.
Then the vote is taken, and then it's ratified.
Then we have a problem. Because the vote was 6-1.
No, not the vote
No.
itself, the consent to vote electronically.
Electronically.
Two
was
different things.
unanimous,
Two different
because
things.
you voted.
And we did both of those. So the motion, the motion is to ratify the board's 6-1 electronic vote to authorize the TVPOA CEO to purchase the 8.74 acre parcel of land situated at the entrance of the Kahiti neighborhood and designated as parcel 048A B002.00 for $172,000. Can I have that? Pat? Pat has made the motion and
Sue did the
seconded
same.
by Sue. Any discussion?
Now you have audience discussion.
Sue? Yes, thank you. Any discussion from the audience? Cap? You have to just press the button at the bottom.
Thank you. At the open meeting, this was discussed because there's additional properties that are located in the main village. And what I had suggested at that time, and I thought it was part of the motion to Winston, is that we would look strategically as to, is this the desire of the board going forward, that as properties may or may not come on the market, that we will in fact consider purchasing them because they could have theoretically a negative impact on the village as a whole. One of those properties is located down by Food Lion, right next to where our place is going to be. The other one was located on Davis Ferry Road, where a high-rise type apartments had been advocated for a few years ago, owned by John Tuck. The third property is located directly opposite the entrance to the yacht club, and at one point in time, they were advocating a filling station, gas station, i.e. a car wash at that site. Now, the gentleman, because he couldn't get direct access onto the parkway, he pulled back, but that property is still owned by a third party and sits right exactly in the middle of our village. So all I'm asking is, now you did this, i.e. electronically, was a discussion of the strategic impact of moving ahead with this concept of buying property that will negatively, theoretically, impact the village? Or was this just a one-off, and if they come up, it's going to be a one-off eye into the future, so that there's no strategic direction regarding this type of purchase? That's all I'm asking.
So this, I'll make the first comment, and others can certainly join in. But this property was like one of 3 or 4 that we had discussed in our last meeting to look at strategically what we should do. Basically, we were faced with a must move immediately on this one because they were calling for best and final offers. So the board decided to move forward immediately with this one. That does not change the direction that we gave Winston on the last board meeting to look at other properties from a strategic perspective and what we should be doing about it.
One last quick question. Did anybody investigate the deed to that property to determine whether or not the ingress and egress to that property had to be vis-a-vis Delico Village property, i.e. the entrance into Kahiti, and that then theoretically whoever bought that could enter into that property right from our property, or would they have had to theoretically then create a whole new road into that property had they decided to move ahead? I just was curious as to, or am curious as to whether we even looked at the deed to see what opportunities existed for that person that owned that, or did we just move ahead because somebody said something negative might happen? Thank you.
I can add a little bit on that. We did certainly review the deed and also the relative plats around that property. The only available entrance for that lot is through the Kahiti entrance. There is not separate adjacent entrance from the state road. I can't remember the name. It's Niles Ferry, excuse me, yes. There's not a separate entrance from Niles Ferry because the rest of the property does not abut Niles Ferry. There's adjacent POA common property in between the two. So the only available entrance was through the POA property in Kahiti. Also, with respect to the property, the deed does currently have a restriction on commercial property use and not residential, and that was deed restricted by Cooper Communities as part of the original development plan.
Okay, any other comments? Tom?
What is the plan for that property? What are you gonna do with it?
So there is, as part of the purchase of the CCI property and now this, there is a land use plan being developed by Winston and his team in conjunction with the Long Range Planning Committee. And their objective is to get something in front of the board for the June board meeting. Yes, sir.
I have a question on the process. In the last meeting, when the CEO was authorized to negotiate a deal, and he did, I take it, he negotiated for 172. The board then voted. Did the CEO take any action, make a commitment on the board or for the board with the property owner based on the last vote?
Bought the piece of property.
Yeah, so we voted and then they
And then-
agreed.
so he did.
They agreed to purchase.
So the ratification of this vote then is moot.
Yes, it's just to ratify. It's a formal process.
So if
right.
you didn't ratify it, what would you do?
Well, yeah, the bylaws,
The ratification is required based upon the bylaws. And the reason the ratification is required is because it was not a unanimous vote. Had it been a unanimous vote, there would have been no ratification
But
required.
they're gonna call for a vote today.
Correct.
Suppose the vote is 3-4 against.
The vote
I'm
today
just-
is
it's a
to
hypothetical
ratify
situation.
the previous vote. It's not to change the vote.
Oh, okay.
That vote was,
Okay.
that vote was 6-1.
Okay, now I understand.
The only purpose of this vote is to ratify that previous vote.
Okay, so you can't change that.
No.
vote.
Bingo, there it
Okay,
is.
good, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, I call for a ratification of the vote. All those that are in favor? 6, all opposed? 6-0 with 1 abstention. So the other thing that we were going to do in this meeting was to vote on a proposed bylaw change. So Kevin, I'll turn that over to you.
Microphone is on. Yes, we had originally scheduled to approve a proposed bylaw amendment at this meeting today. We're going to have to postpone that until next month in February at the regular board meeting due to a notice issue that was discovered. The current bylaws require that all proposed amendments to the bylaws be mailed to property owners. In order to, historically, we have, in order to save mailing expenses, mailed the proposed bylaw amendments along with the quarterly board newsletter so that we don't have to have a separate mailing to all property owners, given the substantial expense involved. We just recently discovered that in the interim, some property owners have opted into receiving only electronic mailing copies of the quarterly newsletter. Therefore, we discovered that we had mailed roughly 5,000 notices, but yet roughly 1,700 or 1,800 had opted to receive email notice of the proposed bylaw amendment included with the board newsletter. So although they did receive the email, that doesn't technically meet the requirements in the bylaws for a mailing of any proposed amendment at least 30 days before the meeting at which they're considered. So Beth, in order to rectify this, once we learned about the notice issue, Beth and her team mailed out, excuse me, all the remaining notices via hard copy in the mail, and that way we'll be in a position to approve formally next month.
And that amendment, those amendments were?
A couple amendments. One is to a title change from general manager to chief executive officer. One amendment is relative to changing the amendment process so that email will be allowed in the future so we don't run into this same issue. And the third amendment is relative to indemnification of the board for any acts taken in their official capacity.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the operations report. Winston?
Thank you, Mr. President. In summation, 2020 was a very good year. I'm going to cover some of the highlights for the year. There's probably a very extensive report that could be given on this. The first time I've ever seen the operation, just all cylinders were firing. Turned out to be a very, very good year. We capitalized on a lot of opportunities. And if you look at the financial statements and the outcome, you can see that's pretty true. Financially, Kevin Ellsworth will cover this in much greater depth, but net income was $5.6 million. The budget was projected at $500,000. Our 2020, which we thought was an outstanding year and had 1.2 PPP grant included in that, was 3.1. So this year was even more outstanding than last year, which I find that hard to believe, but I'll take it and run. Total cash at the end of the year was $12 million, with $2.8 million in operations cash. That's very, very strong financially for the POA. One of the operations that was very busy was ACC. ACC did 374 single-family home permits last year alone. The closest record of that was 254 permits back in the real estate boom, 2005, 6, or 7 in that era. They also approved 331 miscellaneous permits, and at the end of December, there was 318 homes under construction at that time. Another department that was very busy and very successful this year was the marketing department. Just some stats quickly on the marketing operation. The marketing department had 6,536 visitors come through the Welcome Center doors. the discovery visits for the year, people that, physically drove to the village, took a tour by one of our discovery personnel was 737. They generated 5,785 additional leads, and Beth closed 279 lots. These are lots that were sitting idle and not generating any revenue, and now she's turned them into assessment-paying lots and be generating revenue, building homes, so forth and so on. Another department that had a phenomenal year was golf. Golf was just a few rounds shy of 108,000 rounds. That was 5,000 more than last year. Just to give you some basis for comparison, because I think you might be getting spoiled on these high numbers. The 2015 through 2019 average rounds played in those years was 72,000. So we've jumped almost immediately from 72,000 to well over 100,000 rounds in a very short period of time. Congratulations to the golf team on that. I think they've done an outstanding job of pushing that needle forward. Some of the accomplishments in the golf department is they got, I know this for a fact, they got rid of the older lead-based battery carts that were causing them significant problems. They've gone to a newer club cart, better technology, has GPS technology. They're using that technology to their advantage. These carts have lithium batteries. They are more durable, can hold up on a single charge all day long, and are able to go 54 holes. So we've gone from antiques to state-of-the-art carts, and I think the golf team is really capitalizing on that. Another highlight was the Kahiti front bunker renovation. Very huge project. Was taken on pretty much in-house. The design work and some of the excavation was contracted out, but it was done by the Kahiti team and saved us significant money. This year, they're going to finish the course and do the back 9 bunkers. Personally, I think they ought to do away with the bunkers, but it's not really my call. I'd also like to put in a congratulatory and also a plug for merchandise and thank the Delico Village property owners for their support of the golf in general, golfing and golf rounds, but also with their support of the merchandise and purchases. $450,000 in sales for the year versus previous year of $332,000. Very good, and we appreciate that. And just want to encourage everybody. I know sometimes you can go online and get a little better deal, so forth and so on, but if you just keep your dollars at home, it would benefit all of us, and especially benefit the golf world. And anyway, thank you for your support of the golf operation, and thanks to the golf team. Our HR department and admin has had a very difficult year. 21, much like 20, saw some very different shifts in the hiring and employment of personnel. I think it's safe to say that every department operated sometime during 21 shorthanded. Currently, we're looking for 12 employees that are spread out over 7 different positions. It's just very, very difficult. It's unlike any other time I've ever seen. I don't know where all the employees have gone or what's happened to them, but when the COVID hit, they disappeared. Another very busy department, support department, was the IT. They have done significant upgrades in the Delico Village broadcasting area. They have switched over to AT&T fiber and have dropped Charter. They've found system improvements and cost gains, cost benefits by doing that. They've improved sound systems and audio-visual systems here at the Yacht Club and at Kahiti. They have assisted Public Works in installation of bringing a operation in-house, which will save us significant money and also save us on timing. That is bringing our signage, street signage in the operation at Public Works. There's been many weeks we've had to wait for signs to get made so we could put them up. signs get knocked down, signs get old and worn out. They're bringing this in-house, and they're going to find some efficiencies in cost and also some improvements in timing. In the rec operation, a lot has gone on. In short, when Simon came on board, his charge was to take our rec world to the next level. I think he has more than done that, and he continues to push the envelope in that direction. He spent much of this year, or much of last year, investing in his staff. There's a lot of things, certificates and training and programs that he's looked at. He's had his staff get certified in. He has going to take a part of the unused part of the Tokwa Rec Center and take one of the racquetball courts and convert that into an exercise spin classroom. He's organized a lot of new membership programs for our people that enjoy recreation, and brought a lot of activities to the waterfront, which has opened up a whole new set of activities for the property owners. Public Works Department, not a very flashy department. They don't get the notoriety that golf maybe gets, but it's a very important department and a very busy department. I went back and looked some stats last week. In the last 5 years, or in the last 10 years, we have increased in size by 1,400 homes. And in the last 5 years, we have increased in size by well over 500 homes. With that kind of growth, because when you have homes, you have burdens put on our facilities, burdens put on our infrastructure, burdens put on our services, and this department is primarily service-oriented. So when I look back at that, and then I look at the increases we did in areas like our ACC enforcers, turned out to be a very good move in the fact that we had so much building activity going on and increased permitting going on. But some of the activities summed up on a year-to-date basis for last year: sewer tanks installed, 274, new water meters, 394, repaired 336 water leaks over the year, our sewer leaks, repaired 202 water leaks over the year, and during all of that, they also had a water meter change-out program that was 425 were changed over to more modern meters. On top of all that, they've got to maintain our streets, maintain the infrastructure, drainage, and so forth. And just a little fun fact, so far this season, which is primarily in 21, they've carted off 353 truckloads of leaves, or 1,765 tons of our trees and leaves. And I had a discussion with some of the Public Works guys about, well, if we build more homes, where are all these additional leaves coming from? And the simple answer is when they started here, when I started here, that 6-inch or 10-inch or 12-inch tree in diameter is now 2 foot and 3 foot in diameter, and has a lot more branches and a lot more leaves. And we have a lot more homes that require those leaves picked up. So kudos to those guys. They currently are working during the winter months on street right-of-ways, cleanups and replacing shoulder stones, street lights, fixing up signs, drainage operation improvements, and so forth. Clayton's also prepping for the upcoming paving and patching in the road system by talking to asphalt companies and getting them prepped to do bids on our upcoming jobs. And then another department that hopefully everyone here in the village takes advantage of is food service. Food service during the winter months slows down significantly. We kind of go through an uptick during the holiday season, and then after the Christmas parties in January and February, it slows down immensely. So if you don't like crowds in the food service world, this is the time to come out and enjoy it. AWE is still having problems with staffing and food supply shortages. They're having an awful time of ordering stuff and then having it shown up when the truck pulls up. and then they go to complain, and then the warehouse simply tells them, we're not getting it either. If we had it, we would sell it to you. And so please be understanding when you notice something's taken off the menu or they advise they no longer serve that, it's not by choice, it's by, I guess, by force. Some stats on the food service. Year-to-date, the Toca Clubhouse had $1,076,000 in sales. I believe that's a new record. Tenacity Clubhouse had $1,142,000 in sales. And the Yacht Club, I never thought I'd see this number. Yacht Club year-to-date sales was $1,520,000. Also, to my disbelief, the Yacht Club when you look at the subsidy line, and I know that the income statements for the food service are shared between AWE and POA and so forth and so on, but when you look at the key line as far as the subsidy go, the Yacht Club actually was $146,000 to the positive on a subsidy and not negative, which it has been for 35 years prior to this. That's a pretty significant milestone for the food service world to reach. Congratulations to property owners for using their facilities. Congratulations to Andy and AWE and to Mitzi, who is in charge of the food service operation. The catering is back up to 2019 levels, so in some sense you could say that we have weathered the storm and the peak of COVID. But once again, the staffing and food service, I think those numbers could have been a little better had we had those issues not hindering operations. Kahiti also had an excellent year for 21. Total revenues were $492,000. If you go back and look 3 or 4 years ago, you'd have never thought that that would have happened. That is $245,000 above what was budgeted for the restaurant there. And excellent, we project excellent things for the Kahiti Clubhouse for 2022. Any questions? Pat? Bob? Sue?
Any visitors have any questions for Winston? All right, thank you.
Can I leave now?
Can you leave? Next on the agenda is Clayton.
Good evening. So I was asked to give a briefing on the GIS asset management preventive maintenance system. And working with Psac, we have been reviewing those systems and trying to decide which route to go. But as of right now, we have 92,356 assets entered into GIS.
So Clayton, for those that aren't familiar with GIS, could you explain it, what it means?
Our GIS system is where we can go in and it's a global system where we can log in any kind of data we want to where we can go, when we need to find any of these assets, we can go out with our GPS system and go right to that coordinates. So if we're looking for a sewer valve or air release valve or something of that sort, a culvert, we can go right directly to those when those are entered into our system.
Air conditioning unit, heating unit?
Yes, sir. When we get to that point.
Yeah,
Now, the
right.
air conditioning systems are not in there.
I understand.
But that is the go. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay, thanks.
So, as I said, over 92,000 assets are entered into there. All of our water and sewer lines are in there. That's completed. So, we can tell you what size water line or what size sewer line, in what section, how many feet we have of those in any area that you want to know. Just as the streets are entered in there. And how does this help with the streets? In the past, we would have, when we'd go to do paving or pavement preservation, we would have to go out and manually measure those streets to find out how many feet, how many square yards we had. So now all that is entered correctly, length and width. So we can go in, print out an Excel spreadsheet and give you the dimensions on every single street that we have. So that is huge. It saves a lot of time. We're in the process of adding water meters in there. We're adding road culverts in there. We're adding street lights in there to where we can, and our goal is to be able to monitor how old these are. And when we get an asset management system and a preventative maintenance system, we can put the life expectancy in those and we can monitor those as we go. So, working with Psac, we as Public Works staff have met many times on this subject. We know kind of direction we need to go, but first, someone with a POA is going to have to take on or champion the asset management part. Because the asset management part is not a Public Works tool, that is a POA tool that everyone will use. So when someone decides, which route we're gonna go on asset management, then we will be prepared to bring in and get us a preventive maintenance system. We already manually do preventive maintenance check sheets on our buildings, a paper one, but we need to get a system in place to where we can have that in there.
So that, now that you've basically thrown that over to Winston, Winston, who are you going to have responsible for that?
I just making a note of that. I'll talk with Kevin tomorrow. Kevin.
It usually doesn't work, Clayton, to pass the buck up the line.
I wasn't passing it up. It was just, this is going to be a tool for all the POA to use for golf and food services. So I don't think Psac and Public Works staff should make that decision.
I was complimenting you. You were successful.
And we've been talking about this for several years now in terms of the need for a good preventative maintenance system. And I know Steve, who's zoomed in here, has been a big advocate of that as well. And so this is something that we all recognize that we need to do. And I believe in the Psac meeting, you guys were also looking for a board advocate. So we'll be working on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Marty,
Steve, I didn't mention your name for no reason there.
Marty, could you hear me?
Yes.
Before we even think about a asset management system, we're going to need a champion that's going to drive that cultural change throughout the organization. So the first thing we got to find is who's the leader that's going to drive that cultural change, and then you analyze and decide what kind of asset management system you will buy and install to support your new culture of how you're going to run the village.
Good point. Okay. Thank you. You still have the floor.
Yes, sir. Next, I was asked to give an update on the water system study. We have received that study. Working with Psac and Public Works staff, we are getting a proposal put together to present to Winston and the board. And that's where we're at right now. We're working on that.
Okay. And you were also going to mention the sewer
Yes, sir.
system study.
The sewer system study, we have the preliminary report on that. We are reviewing that with Psac. We have seen the report. We're looking at it. We've got some questions. We are communicating back and forth with Jacobs. So we hopefully will have a plan of attack on that soon also. I know people are wanting to know what we're going to do, but this is very detailed, both of them are very big projects, and we feel like we just really need to do our due diligence, make sure we're headed in the right direction for the future of the village.
Okay. And then the last item was road assessments.
Yes, I was asked to speak on this. In 2019, S&ME done a road evaluation assessment of our streets, and they rated the streets from good, satisfactory, fair, poor, very poor, serious and failed. Now, we didn't have any streets that were really, really bad. The worst one we had was in the Chota Commercial Center, which was not ours at the time. And, so that will be addressed. And then we had another one that was in a Tenasseee Hills area, and we have done a lot of work, last year in 2021 in that area. So every year, we've taken this plan that they gave us, working with Psac, we've evolved it into a spreadsheet that has a maintenance, asphalt maintenance plan, and it'll show you if we're gonna pave, or if we're gonna mill and fill, or if we're just gonna overlay, or if we're gonna do rejuvenator, or if we're gonna do a preservation, as in a sealer. And we take that every year, we look at the streets in the village. So we don't just go off of our plan, we have a plan, but we evaluate the streets every year to look and see if for some reason we've had failing on a street that was planned to be done in a couple years. So we review to make sure we don't need to move anything up. So if you'll look at our plan from last year to this year, we moved some stuff from 23, we moved to 22, which balanced some stuff out, but it was some streets that needed attention sooner. So we work off of the plan that S&ME done, and the one that PSAC put together for us, and we review those streets every year. And we've been blessed to have some PSAC members that will just get out and ride the streets and look at those streets and evaluate them for us. So that has been a huge help. So working with this, I feel that if you go back, and I don't know who has this study that they done in 2019, if you had that report and you went back and reviewed it and looked at the lower ratings on those streets, then I believe we've excelled those. I think that 71, if you went now, would be mid-90s. So I think we've excelled our streets in a good way. Now, some other streets are taking a beating from all the construction, and we will have to be evaluating those. They're not gonna follow in cycle the way we had it planned, because we'll have to move stuff around to keep our streets at the level they need to be. But again, it goes back to the huge number of homes being built and the beating from the traffic.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Clayton from the board?
Marty?
Well, I'll reserve.
Okay, Steve, go ahead.
Clayton, the road study that was done a couple years ago should be in the Public Works office, because that study was done with the Public Works Department. And part of the deal was when the board approved the assessment of our roads, part of the deal was that the Public Works staff would be trained so they could follow up on an annual basis or every other year basis and go out and reevaluate and score the roads. So when do you plan to go back out and fulfill that commitment to the board, reassess the roads so we can take a look at that score?
Well, that's the first I was made aware of it from your email the other day. But yes, that is not a problem for us to go out and rescore those roads. I feel that our team is trained to do that. They are qualified to score these roads and give a good accurate score. And if that's what the board would like to see, then we can provide that.
Yeah, that's the purpose why we approved the project a couple years ago, because this is an ongoing system, so we don't have to hire consultants to come in and tell us the quality of our roads.
Sure. Like I say, we evaluate them every year, so scoring them won't be a problem. We can do that.
Pat?
I'll reserve until the audience. I just want to see if my question comes up from them.
Okay. Anybody in the audience have a question? Tom?
We purchased, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We purchased that GIS system, I think, about 10 years ago. And at the time, we were told that it would be populated so that every piece of equipment, golf course maintenance, HVAC, everything would be in that system for use by the Long Range Planning Committee to project out our replacement expenditures over time. That's been 10 years. Why have we not populated that program to include all those things? When we hired Bud Murray to be our engineer, that was one of his primary focuses, was to get that thing populated so that we could do our projections. What's taken 10 years?
Well, I'm not sure what it's taken that long. If you go back and look from August 1, from when I was named Public Works Director, you will see a significant increase in information that's been entered into the GIS. I'm not sure it would do everything that you're thinking it will do. If it would, then we wouldn't need the preventative maintenance system or the asset management system. As thorough as we have looked at this system, it won't do everything you're talking about, but it is a huge help to Public Works. And if, like I say, if you'll go back and look at the data that's been entered since August, you'll see we are populating it now.
Cap, you were on the board when we purchased that thing. Isn't that pretty much what it was designed, or we were told it was designed to do? Okay.
Is this on?
Yes, sir.
My understanding is the other evening, we had a major problem with our main pumping station. We actually blew a pipe off and then had to bring people in at quite late in the evening to work on that. In addition, I believe, in attending the Psac meetings and that, and talking to the members, we now have an issue with Loudoun Utility Board, where they are not allowing us to pump under the way that we used to pump, that we could pump at any time. Now they're using that system for their own usage, and then we're getting not secondhand use, but not the way that we once thought. So it looks like we need to have somebody either on the board or on Psac talking to Loudoun Utility Board so that we have a full understanding on how we're going to pump our sewage, particularly now that when you listen to all the new houses that Winston mentioned, so that we have much more sewage to pump. I know we have this study. I don't know whether that study even involved Loudoun Utility to say, are they on the same schedule as we are? I know that Bruce Johnson negotiated with Loudoun Utilities on our water situation, and we were able to avoid $1 million expenditure on a water tank. I'm just wondering if, I know that Bruce was on the board, got off this past, just in December, but he knows the people at Loudoun Utilities, and maybe it might be wise to ask Bruce to get maybe involved with the sewage aspect so that we know fully well when we can pump and how much we can pump so that we don't run into any more problems.
We do have those answers. We are working with LUB, Jacobs Engineering, along with Psac and Public Works staff. We have been on scene with LUB in their facilities, and we are working with them.
Yeah, Clayton, all I was going to say is this is not a board issue. This is an operating issue. This goes to the CEO and your organization.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Clayton. Oh, sorry, Pat.
So I'm going to ask a question, and I'm not going to expect an answer. I can give the answer, but I just want to. That's just the way I work sometimes. This is an informational inquiry with an explanation, because I don't want anybody to get up, walk out, and get driving their car and go, "Wait a minute, Clayton said water study reviewed." So we are a community that had a water study done a while ago. And that water study came back and said Cooper installed the adequate infrastructure to carry us through build-out. Correct? We had that study.
Yes.
Okay, so that's probably the only time you're going to have to answer. So with that, why, again, you're driving home, you're going to say, why are you having another water study? Well, we want to be 7 people here, the staff. We want to be absolutely sure that this community that was designed for vacation-type houses, small fishing village, small streets, that turned into a thriving retirement community that is drastically different than it was originally designed. We want to make sure that 5 years, 10 years from now, because I probably won't be here, but some of you that are just moving in here now, 15 years like me today, you're going to still be here. Are you going to be saddled with something that we don't expect now? And that's what we're having done. We want to know what's coming in the future. We just had the reevaluation of the LUB contract, which in effect brought our water rates up to the same of Lenoir City, Loudoun, and the rest of the county. We were getting an obscene deal on water. Now we're just equalized. Yeah, and now part of their deal is they're going to install infrastructure to our easement line, and we have to know that from our easement line to your house, high and low, we can provide adequate water for the long period of time. If it's 10 years out, it's 10 years out. We can start amassing the reserves for it. If it's not 10 years out, then we don't have to amass the reserves for it. But it's the obligation today of this board to set that future where we need to be and where we need to go. Correct? So when you go home tonight and you ask yourself the question, why this study? That's why. Okay?
Clayton, that was a great answer.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready to move on? Let's do Jerry Dougherty and Delico Village Volunteer Fire Department. Welcome.
Thank you all for allowing me to return. I think our last update was back in July. So I'll give you a brief update of the 2021 year for the Delico Village Fire Department. Our 5-year run summary, we'll go into the 21 details, some organizational chart changes, membership changes or updates, a snapshot of COVID-19, and our TEMSCON system where we are today. 2021, we came in at 982 calls, which is a 13% increase over 2020 year. So the EMS calls were 759. The other calls, fire, rescue, assist, were 232. So it's keeping in the 25, 75 in that range as far as split EMS versus other calls. This is a snapshot of the 2021 year in detail. 982 calls. We had 62 mutual aid calls that we responded to, 38 to Loudoun County Fire and Rescue, 17 to Greenback, 5 to Philadelphia Fire, and 2 to Loudoun County Sheriff's Office. And then our EMS calls, we had 596 total, and they're broken down by COVID 1, 2, 3, 4. And we ask those questions when we're at the front door of the house, so we know whether we have to gown up and put protective equipment on our responders to protect ourselves. So you can see the COVID 1 and 2 numbers, north and south, and that's suspected or confirmed. They were higher in the month of December, and so far this year we've had 37 calls, and 30% of them are COVID positive. Our lift assist, we had 174 lift assist. Everybody's saying it's the south end, but it's a good split there, north versus south. The EMS calls, definitely the south has the more populated needs for that, since it's the older end of the community. Our fire alarms, we had 107. Of those, 14 of them is when we received mutual aid from the county departments. So we provided 62 calls to the county the county supplied us 7 times for mutual aid to respond to our calls. The fire alarms were at 93. Medical alarms, we had 8. Motor vehicle accidents, we had a total of 15. 6 of them in the north, which is north of the traffic light, and 9 of them from the south. Public assist 8, so, and miscellaneous and voice and all that. So that's what we did in 2021.
Jerry, what's a code 73?
Code 73 is possible dead. Unresponsive person. So we, of those 9 that are shown there, 7 of them were alive when they left the house. But we don't know what the we don't follow up on the status if they made out once they got to the hospital. Okay, this is the new organization chart. The one change that, or 2 changes that have taken place is a new deputy chief after 12 years of service with the department. Bruce Hamilton had retired at the end of the year, so Bob Lennington has come on board. He was a lieutenant prior to being appointed deputy chief. Bob comes to us from New York, upstate New York, where he was assistant chief, deputy chief, and fire chief. So he has wealth of experience, and a code enforcement officer also. And then the other new addition to the leadership team is that on the left-hand side, Engine 124 Lieutenant Bill Ballinger. He's new to the village, came in late 2019. He has become an EMR, retired from Allstate Insurance, and was former fire chief up in the Baltimore, Maryland area. So we have a wealth of leadership and experience. Just a COVID update. The state has changed their information. So as of 1/18, the Loudoun County had 10,488 cases, 148 deaths. Monroe County had 10,755 with 196 deaths. And the state of Tennessee was 1,540,515 with 21,095 deaths. So they are only updating the website once a week now with the changes. And as of the first of the year, we went back to THEMSCON 4, and that is basically we have 2 vehicles on the road, one in the north, one in the south, and we will respond with 3 people plus the driver of the vehicle to all calls, unless it's a CPR call, and then we'll have 7 people on that. We monitor that. After the first week, we thought, we may have pulled this trigger too soon because of the number of COVID cases. The whole 18 months, we had 0 COVID cases within the department. 1st of January, we had 4 people contacted or confirmed with it based on family visits over the Christmas holidays. So we're back to full force right now. So we're responding under THEMSCON 4. This is when I met in July, we had 31 members. We've had a couple retire or quit the department, and we've had some new members join on, so we're sitting today at 35 members on board. And over on the extreme right-hand side, you'll see some of them which says in training, and they're the ones that are taking their EMR training right now. But 3 of those that are in training are experienced firefighters that had their EMT license expire, so they're going through becoming an EMR to support us. And if I'll just highlight 2 incidents that happened in the 4th quarter of this year. We had a 2-car motor vehicle accident about a mile north of the water fountain near the Dog Run Park. It was head-on, 2 cars, multiple entrapment upon arrival. We immediately, the priority ambulance was the second one there. I was the first one there. Priority ambulance was the second. Immediately, we asked for 2 helicopters because we knew that with the multiple entrapments, we knew that we were going to need some help. Lifestar requested, they responded immediately. One was from Sweetwater, and the second one was just by chance up at the UT Hospital. So Sweetwater landed first, and within 5 minutes, the second bird was there, and they all landed right on 444, right near the Dog Run Park. Both patients were alive when they were loaded on the birds to be transported. Two patients later succumbed in the following days from the accident. It was great to feel the experience when I was there. The rescue truck pulled right up. I knew the crews that I had, and I basically said, you have that vehicle, you have that vehicle. They did a fantastic job. And let's see, the next one was, and this photo is generic from the web. This is not the photo from the scene itself. But we had a call on, in November, around 10 p.m. on Tadegwa Way, smoke alarms going off, possible fire in the second floor bedroom. Upon arrival, Deputy Chief performed a 360, and that's basically to walk around the house. What do you see? When he got there, the residents were all out of the house, and the son said, I think there is a fire in my bedroom. I closed the door. The chief looked up, and he could see light smoke working its way down from the ceiling in the second floor right outside the bedroom. When he got to the back side of the house, or the C side of the house, he heard popping. Flames were coming out the window on the second floor. The fire was extinguished using less than 150 gallons of water, and the reported loss was about $16,000. And a couple of people have been asking, what's the significance of the hydrant color coding? And what we're doing, working with Clayton and the Water Department, is that we're coming up to the NFPA standards, recommendations, and what we're doing is working with the Water Department. We're going out and flowing water from the hydrants, and once we flow it, we will color code, we'll paint the top of the, what we call the bonnet of the helmet, hydrant, so when we're responding to a scene, we can look and see exactly what is required. And you might say, well, why is that important? Well, if you're in a 3,200 square foot house, 2-story, I need 1,000 gallons of water to put that fire up. So that's what we want to do, is we want to make sure that we can hook up to a hydrant and know that we're going to have enough water to extinguish a fire. So far, we've only had, I think, 4 red hydrants. We've worked with the waterworks. We found out the reasons for 2 of them, and we're still working on the other 2. But the other ones are green, couple blue, and mostly orange. And I want to thank Clayton for allowing us to use the GIS system, because we can see the water mains. We know the sizes of the water mains across the whole village, so we know where we're going to expect hydrant problems, or we could expect hydrant problems. And lastly, we will be submitting a grant to FEMA to replace all of our self-contained breathing apparatus for about $130,000. That'll be submitted later this week. Any questions?
I've got one, and it's to remind me. You talked about the accident down there in the helicopters, and if my memory serves me correct, that is an area that's fairly wide open, and you could direct the copters down, and
Yes.
no issue, just keep the cars away. What I wanted you to do, because we've had a lot of people moved in since, I believe it was last year that you reviewed this.
Right.
You and your team spent an inordinate amount of time developing landing areas, correct?
Correct. We have 6 of them identified, and this one was a backup where the dog park.
Right.
Because if we didn't use that one, or the dog run, if we didn't use that, we would have went up to where the TVA launches is, right below the Delico dam.
Right.
That would be our next land.
And I remember, was it in the realm of 40, 60, 80 hours that you guys spent developing these?
Yep.
So we talk about I fall down, my wife can't pick me up, and I have a fire, or I have an emergency, or I swallow something the wrong way, and then you guys are there, and then we get on next door, and what a great job you guys do. But behind the scenes, there's gonna come that emergency where you're gonna need that fast flight, and these people on that list he showed have put innumerable hours into researching where they can quickest move my body to a point and get me help. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So Jerry, I had one question too, and that was, you had a list, I believe you had 35 people, you said? So,
35 members on the board.
So-
Department right now.
how does that compare with the need?
These 35 members, I'd match up against any pay department close by.
Are you in need of any additional though, I guess?
We're
is-
always open for new members, and we'll bring them in. We just brought, the one guy we brought in last Tuesday. We voted him in, and he started class on the week before. We brought him in and says, we'll bring you, we're going to bring you in, but we got your commitment that you're going to take the training. And he said, yes, he'll do it. So we brought him in. So we average maybe 1 or 2 inquiries a month. Some people say, no, it's too much, because the former retired department members, when they see how active we are, they don't want it.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you, guys.
Jerry, one other question. Have you done the pressure tests on all the hydrants?
No, we have worked our way around all of the, what we call our pre-planned buildings. That's all the properties of the POA, yacht club, golf course, rec center, the business strip, the banks, and then Sloan's, Premier neighborhood. And then we're working our way from the south north, because at the time we started, there was a possibility of a tank going in, and we didn't want to come up to the north and start doing hydrant testing, and then all of a sudden the flows or characteristics change with whatever was going to happen. So working our way from the south to the north right now. There's about 365 hydrants.
There's a question from the visitors.
We're Delico Village, and all, we worry about the Loudoun County portion.
Tom?
I know you weren't able to have your open house this year. How's your fundraising going?
We exceeded last year's numbers. Hold the first weekend in May. I think it's the 6th or the 7th. It's booked. We're going to have it.
Oh, good. Thanks. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Jerry. Next, we have Andy.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Oh, right here. Make it turn green. The one on the right. There you go.
There we go. All right, good afternoon. I guess I'm going to use this thing. Wow. Trying to make it confusing for me, aren't you? All right, we'll do a little 2021 update. As Winston was saying, it was certainly a challenging year for us with things, especially as labor and supply issues. We did financially in a couple of spots do great. We still do have currently have 100 employees. We are short by about 25 employees to hit April. That's pretty typical for us to be at about 100 now. We are super quiet with the weather, lack of boating, lack of golf, and the cold. But we'll see. We're gonna do everything that we possibly can, of course, to hire for spring and be prepared. Primarily, we're looking at back of house positions. Front of house, we're in pretty good shape with servers and managers. We could use a few really good people, but but our real strong, or our real big challenge is kitchen and cooking. You know, for 2021, we went through the year, basically every truck that showed up, again, as Winston was saying, would have certain things, some things we ordered, some things we didn't. It was basically just a day-to-day, hey, what can we do, adapt, where do we have to go to get whatever we got to get to put something on the menu. I know we had a lot of comments about inconsistencies of product. I mean, I'll be honest with you, even today, we order a French fry and we get whatever they give us. So our French fries at every restaurant are changing on a daily basis. And so, yes, the French fries are not going to be the same tomorrow as they were today. And that's unfortunately one of the small things that we deal with. On a really good point, as Winston said, the yacht club catering business went back up to 2019 levels. And that helped us considerably from a financial standpoint. I've been here 12 years. I know that I've had multiple conversations with board as well as Winston and Mitzi, and I don't think the yacht club has ever been in a surplus scenario ever, and we were well into the six figures, so it was pretty sizable year. We did a lot with a little. Kahiti also had a great year. The kids over there did a phenomenal job. They get amazing feedback. The sales have just gone through the roof. That Kahiti committee, the Kahiti residents, everybody that just takes such ownership in that clubhouse over there has just helped to make that a very successful business. I believe that we have doubled business in the last 3 years. So there were 5 AWE babies in 2021. That is definitely a sign of COVID. So 2020, everybody was home, and in 2021, they were all having babies. So that is at least 3 more than I think I've ever had in any single year. So we're able to continue our tradition of giving every employee a turkey for Thanksgiving. I know they appreciated that. And Skylar and I sat for many hours throughout the year trying to figure out what do we have to do throughout the year to keep our labor pool at least where it's at, and keep our people, stay ahead of the game, so to speak, ahead of the market. We distributed another round of COVID bonuses towards the beginning of the year, and at the end of the year, I was able to give every single employee a cash bonus, just to basically say thank you for coming to work. And also in the middle of the year, as you know, all the larger restaurant groups or the larger franchises were, coming out of their minimum wage, so to speak, and giving everybody some raises, and everybody was figuring out, what they were going to pay people. We basically went to all the non-tipped employees and just gave them a raise, and just said, again, we appreciate you being with us, we appreciate you staying, and thank you. So we did that throughout the year. Just, again, it wasn't even hiring new people. It was just to keep our people that were with us. And I think it worked, so for the most part, because we didn't lose a lot, which was great. So we'll go in. I'll run into financials. I mean, I know you guys have had this for the weekend, so you might have questions. Again, as Winston said, we had a huge growth rate from 2020. Not really that difficult to do. But it does pull us back into semblance of 2019 numbers. The biggest difference, you'll see that labor piece. We did the sales with a fraction of the staff and the team. That is not something that can happen again this year. We were very close to burnout on a lot of people. Tons of overtime, and we're gonna have to hopefully rectify that for this year and have a bigger labor dollar number to handle the business at hand. But the beautiful part at the end of the year is that bottom dollar number, 146,430. That was profit for the year. So roll into TOQA. Again, a nice growth pattern. Not as much as the yacht club because we don't have the catering at TOQA, but a nice bump of about almost over $200,000. We do struggle there continually with our labor. We've had very inconsistent managers, and our team has just transition. That ever since we've opened that new restaurant, unfortunately, we cannot find a solid team. Hopefully now with Chris and Chava over there, both our general manager and our chef, who've been working together now for about 3 months, we should be in a much better place going into 2022. And then we'll roll into Tenassi, also a nice growth from 2020 to 2021. We were able to put some money on the bottom there. There is a little more of a consistent team over there. And again, you've got the numbers there. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Kahiti, again, I think probably the first year ever that Kahiti actually made money, certainly under POA ownership. The sales numbers, I mean, that's a huge amount of growth. Like I said before, I think we've doubled sales in the last 3 years. I do not, unfortunately, see that continuing. We are approaching, basically, as in the village, you're approaching build-out. I mean, at $500,000 in that restaurant, we are approaching many times where we're at max. We will need to put some more money into the labor pool this year. There have been some extensive, or I should say big increases in product costs as of January 1. So these numbers will change a little bit, but you know, we'll do our best to control everything and continue to grow.
Andy?
Yeah.
Tell me what's basic operating expenses.
So I have, so 3 years ago when I took on the consulting at Kahiti, I am running off of your P&L. So what I wanted to do for you for this meeting and for the public was to take the financials that I provide you and I have for the last 10 plus years with the Yacht Club and then Tenassi and Tokwa, is to put these in an apple-to-apple system. So when you look at your P&L, you have things on there like maintenance trucks. Well, that's not a restaurant operating cost. So I've taken out of your P&L those costs that are not directly associated with the operation of the restaurant. So that's why that $67,000 number is different, and that $6,400 on the bottom number is different than if you're looking strictly at your Kahiti food service P&L. Some items moving forward, just to talk about 22 a little bit. Obviously, you know, the staffing is our number one biggest challenge. We already, as of last year, our minimum wage, if you want to call it that, we raised from $8 to $10. That's the lowest we pay anybody for anything is $10. We are going to have to be pushing a pretty high number to start to try and get some cooks in here. About a 30% higher number than previous. Obviously, if we're hiring new people at a higher rate, the people that have been with us for a while can't be making less, so they're also going to need to be bumped. We've tried some sign-on bonuses. We haven't had a lot of luck, but we'll continue to do it. I doubled the referral fee at the beginning of last year for staff referring other employees. We'll continue that. And we're gonna push as hard as we can to get our staffing levels, you know, where we need them to be. You know, I read this morning that McDonald's, Starbucks, and Chipotle are all changing their operating hours as of immediately in tens of thousands of restaurants across the country because they can't get staff. It's the last thing in the world we want to do is have to cut any more shifts or operations hours. But once the demand starts to increase in April, that's when we're really going to be at crunch. So we're doing everything we can. Currently, if we can find people, we're hiring them now, and we'll just pay them throughout the winter if we have to. But we're doing everything we possibly can. Product costs, again, January 1 was a big day for everybody. We got a whole bunch of sheets in end of December saying, just to let you guys know, this is going up, that's going up, this is going up, that's going up. So we got hit with a ton of product cost increases as of January 1. Some of them have just been ongoing throughout the year, but we are focusing on rolling out some new menus. We're focusing on trying to have the stuff on the menu that we can actually get that's not coming in and not coming in. So, you know, hopefully we can have some consistent menus and actually get the products at the time being. and then working on just specials. We're going to really focus on that this year. We're going to try and be creative. We're going to try and continue to offer value when we can. Our distributors are still having things on a weekly basis that are on, deals, so to speak, and we'll do everything we can to get that stuff on our menu so that we can get the residents, something nice, something creative, at a good price and a good value. I mean, that's really what we try and drive at the end of the day. I was asked to add this on here, so I did. As far as beer is obviously huge in this village. If you look at the last line, beer sales make up 20% of all sales at Kahiti, 10% at Tanasi, 13% at Tokwa, and only 5% at the Yacht Club. Beer kegs have risen over 40% in the last 5 years, and as you see, our prices have risen by less than 15%. So we will be raising the price of beer by 50 cents, effective immediately at Tanasi, Tokwa, and the Yacht Club. The pitchers have never gone up in years and years and years and years and years. They're way behind, so they have to be righted. So those will be going up as well. Kahiti, of course, is yours at the moment. So, I am suggesting that we get consistent and we have the same price at Kahiti that we do at Tanasi and Tokwa. There are 3 golf courses. Obviously, you pay the same for golf. You should probably pay the same for beer. It's the same beer. It's the same product. It's the same size. There is a 20-ounce at Kahiti, so we recommend that we just raise that by 50 cents as well. So, and I believe that's it for that. I do want to, real quick, just give you guys an update on the Yacht Club closings, because we've just finally gotten some good information, I should say. So February, the last 2 weeks in February, we'll be closing to redo the kitchen floor, as well as the kitchen ceiling. That is a 2-week process. We will be closing as of the 14th. We will have at the Yacht Club Valentine's Day special all weekend, Friday and Saturday. And then, of course, Tanasi and Tokwa will be open for the 14th. And that will last us a complete 2 weeks. And then we just found out that the new bar for upstairs is scheduled to be completed on March 18th. So we have allotted the last 3 weeks in March to close to redo the upstairs bar. We are praying that the transportation of that bar from somewhere in the Midwest, that it will arrive within the week, so that we will be able to finish this thing in a timely fashion and be open at the beginning of April. That is a pretty sizable job, demoing that whole area, redoing the floor, and the whole soffit up top. So that is happening as well the last couple weeks in March. I know that Beth has already put in the telegram about February, and obviously we'll continue to let people know and communicate as best we can. Questions?
Let me turn my mic on. Okay. So anyway, what I got out of this, good to see that you're changing your menu items. Thank you. Very good. Well, I know, and it comes from good to see that you got a strategy of taking on the available items rather than hoping you get the same things and you don't. Good.
Yeah, so we've actually, I believe we changed pages of menus at all the restaurants multiple times throughout the year just to try and curb it.
Good idea. Thanks. And I also noticed, if my calculations are right, you showed the restaurants, and if I calculated up and I used the bad word, Sue, is subsidy. Okay. So if I use that bad word, you've made that swing $337,000 to the better. Thank you very much. Outstanding. And if we all go to various restaurants around here, we've noticed a number of our favorite restaurants have shut down or are closing or have drastically reduced their hours, haven't we? Some of our most favorites. And what happens is, if we, the property owners in Delico Village, and I'm just assuming, so you're going to have to say, yeah, Pat, okay, I kind of agree, or yes, I fully agree, or you're full of it. If we were an investor, we would not invest in Delico Village restaurants. Every one of them is buried in a neighborhood somewhere, except one, Tanasi, that's on a highway. Every one of them is buried in a neighborhood. You would not invest in a Delico restaurant at all if you were investing in this business. But as a property owner, and you as a property owner, we own these restaurants. And we're watching other restaurants fall by the wayside. And I think we owe it to ourselves. And what we've seen is during the last 2 years of COVID, we've become the go-to because we didn't want to go be with them and be subjected to a potential illness or flu or COVID. We stuck close to home, and that's where you were delivering meals into parking lots and all that. And they were good, and thank you very much. And then I think what has happened is we decided we could come to these restaurants buried in neighborhoods, and you swung this $337,000 to the good. Again, thank you very much. But the message to Delico Village is if you like to not drive 7 to 14 miles, if you don't want to drive 20 miles, you want a real good meal, the prices are going to go up. He just told you why, everywhere. But we're open and they're closing. And we're open because as a property owner association, we're willing to take that little bit of subsidy. But please, patronize our restaurants and keep them open. Because we're going to pay for them as property owners where it comes out of an assessment dollar or it comes out of a food dollar. And I visited your restaurants, my restaurants, our restaurants over the last couple of months with friends and family and people moving in. Outstanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's what I wanted to say.
Or comments, I guess.
Have a great-
Yeah. Rick? Okay, anybody from the visitors? All right, thank you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hey, Charlotte, we have you next.
Okay, Mr. President, board members, villagers, Happy New Year. Okay, what happened? We'll go over the key non-financial indicators first. Assessed lots for the month of December, 6,716. That is an average monthly of 6,580. POA lots sold, 325 year-to-date. An inventory remains of 300. Head count, we are searching for a couple accounting clerk positions, code enforcement, 3 water and sewer, 3 public works, 1 Tenasseee golf maintenance, and 1 Kahiti golf maintenance. Moving down to public works, property transfers, almost 1,200. New property permits year-to-date, 374. We are currently building 318 homes. Golf, record year, as mentioned, 107,902 rounds. That's 5,000 over prior year. Docks, the wait list is at 189. RV, the wait list is 80. And recreation, once again, we've exceeded prior year with individual memberships averaging 582 per month and family memberships averaging 880. We've had a record 21 with revenue of 25 million, expenses 19.4 million, for net income of 5.6 million, exceeding our budget by 5 million and prior year by 2.5 million. Going over the categories of revenue, assessment revenue continues to grow with the increased number of paying lots. The late fee shortfall is offset by bad debt expense. Golf doing exceptionally well for 21, beating prior year by $370,000. Nice job. Recreation membership, 40% over budget, once again beating prior year as well. Installed tanks We had 9 jobs closed in December. We've seen a slight profit erosion for '21. Dock revenue is favorable with, as mentioned, a waiting list of 180 and RV with a wait list of 80. There's a favorable variance for ACC permits due to the higher number of new home permits, offset by slightly lower miscellaneous permits. And then other revenue is primarily due to the administrative service fee on the transfers. And here is the trended revenue and expenses by month. And the categories of expenses, as you can see, maintenance is favorable. Once again, the $800,000 is pretty much due to timing delays, and that relates to $159,000 for pavement preservation to do the side roads in Kahiti, $179,000 for overlay, $300,000 for water system improvement, $27,000 for sewer system study, $155,000 for the water storage rehab, and $40,000 for the wet well coating. There's
So are
favorable-
these based on timing of the bills, or are some of this carry forward?
Carry forward,
It's all carry forward?
yes.
Okay.
With respect to salaries, we have a favorable variance, and related to that is $75,000 golf, Public Works $328,000, and Rec $56,000. Once again, water and sewer, favorable revenue. Food, as mentioned, food service going strong. Very good year for '21. And other, the favorable variance is mainly due to the sale of lots. And here's the net income trend by month for the year. Okay, these are the rounds for golf. Tokwa, just over 34,000 rounds, Tanasi 31,000, and Kahiti almost 25,000 rounds. Guest rounds, strong. Tokwa 5,500, Tanasi 5,600, and Kahiti 6,200. And then cart rounds by course for a total consolidated rounds of just under 108,000. And once again, here's rec membership. As mentioned, household average of 880. For December, it was strong with 974, and individual memberships average for the average monthly 582, and for the month of December 586.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Charlotte? Any from the visitors? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ellsworth.
It's a little nicer greeting than Rick usually gave me.
Your time will come. Marty will get you too.
Okay, I'll touch on some of these quick because I think Winston mentioned a lot of them. 2021 finished strong with the highest net income, $5.6 million in POA history. I went back through all the trended actuals that we have, and although we had a few good years, obviously the last year and right around 2006, nothing compared to what we experienced this year. What that allowed for us to do was have strong cash and reserves, higher capital investments. I think, having capital in the $4 million range every year seems a little frightening, but, demand and performance are kind of dictating that, which allows for, future amenities and growth, and some of that will be borne out in the upcoming reserve study. But when I look at that 5.6 million, you're like, wow, where did all that go? If you look at that plus the 1.8 million of depreciation, it's roughly our free cash flow of 7.4 million. You're like, well, where did that go? Well, along with a good financial year, I think we managed it very fiscally responsible. We did increase our reserves 4.5 million. And when I look at the trend of our reserves over the last at least 15 years, that reserve has always been kind of, hey, we'll save, we'll spend, we'll save, we'll spend. And that reserve balance has floated between $2.5 and $4 million every single year, and especially in the year like when we paid for the Tokwa Clubhouse. When we made that investment in that facility, it was intentional that reserves would be drawn down and then assessments and future increases would go to rebuild those reserves. So sitting at close to $10 million in reserves is no small undertaking that we can put away for the future. We also spent 1.3 million on the CCI investment. You'll see on our balance sheet, we've got the 3.975 million of debt that came along with that strategic investment, but we, through operating cash, pulled together 1.3 million for that investment. We also paid down the Tokwa debt, and if you recall, that carried a higher interest rate. So that was another good thing to pay down and really set us up for the future. So all those ins and outs during the year accounted for 7.1 million of that 7.4. So, we did get a little bit of favorability, which is timing, about 800,000 that Charlotte talked about on the maintenance. We did increase that significantly for the 2022 budget and carried over some of that expense, so Clayton and his new team can really hit the ground running, particularly on the road maintenance that he talked about. Cooper investment, I talked about that. We created a commercial division that you'll see in your detailed P&Ls, specifically for the commercial properties. Beth is working with all the tenants. We are getting rent checks coming in, so that's good. I always like that. She still has to work on giving it a little bit of a facelift, but so far that's going well. The docks, Pat will talk about the docks in a minute. That's kind of rolled into the docks division. And then the common property, the land portion, just sits within admin on the balance sheet. We talked about golf having an outstanding record high of 108,000 rounds. One item that's been kind of hanging out there for a while, if you recall earlier in the year, the Public Works Admin building had burned down. We have gone through a long process with vendors. The building is built. The Loudoun County Building Inspector is looking at the footings, and they could bring that building in from, I believe, Georgia, right, Clayton? So I think Clayton's expecting that to be put in within a few weeks, depending on weather. More on the administrative side, audit planning has already been underway. We've got an audit planning meeting with the audit committee. Early March, field work will be in April. I'm also starting to work with our insurance broker. April is our annual renewal of all of our insurance policies. We are insured for the new Cooper assets from day one. That was one thing that we did put in place. So I don't have a good feel yet of how the insurance carriers are looking at this next year with rates. But obviously our broker, TIS, certainly works hard on our behalf to try to source that out to all the different carriers. We did go through a year-end inventory with our external auditors for primarily public works and golf inventory that we have. Those counts went well, no issues. And then some good news too, some capital that we were waiting on, things to come in like sign shop and the vacuum excavator did come in. And I know earlier during Clayton's, Cap, I think you brought up the incident that happened with the sewer break. That vacuum excavator actually came in very handy to kind of clean out the trenches while the POA staff can repair the leak. So some very good things happening in the village.
May I?
Yes, sir.
So 14, 15 years ago, you move in the village, there's 4,500, 5,000 people live here, 3 golf courses, rec center, yacht club, the restaurants are all here, Kahiti's here, everything's booming, everything's fine. Housing recession, bang. And what got me thinking is you talked about, you've looked at these reserves and what we've had over the last decade or so, and they've always been in the $2 to $4 million. And if I go back and I look at this, I'm seeing that over the last 2 years, we have shown an increase, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then I'm thinking, okay, so now we have an increase and we go up 5% one year in assessment fees, we go up 5% another year in assessment fees. And so one side of me is over here thinking, I'm paying for a savings account, I'm not paying for anything. Well, wait a minute. So now I need to think in terms of the way I live at my house, and we all live at our house. So if I have a family of 1 and I have a reserve of a couple of $1,000s, I'm okay. I get married, should I go up in my savings account or should I stay the same? Technically, I should go up, shouldn't I? Because now I got an emergency coming. My wife may need to eat a little bit more than I did by myself. Then I have 3 kids or 4 kids or whatever. My point is, as we've increased from 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 when I moved here to 10,000 people, if we only have a reserve of a couple of million and we don't increase that savings account, which is what a reserve is, and we have a building burned down, how do we pay for it?
Reserves.
Or if you increase your use on Tokwa Road because you're running more and more people up and down it, and now instead of putting a preservative on it, Clayton, what do you have to do? Mill and pave? And it's like 5 times as much. So I don't want to leave your beginning to say, oh, look how good we are and how much we've saved, because if you don't save that amount of money, you've got to pay for it somewhere when you need it. And typically that's either a special assessment, oh heaven forbid, or you're going to have to borrow. And we don't want to do that either.
No.
Okay, so I don't want to give the impression that we're saving all of this money and we're just hoarding it away. Oh, whoa, boy, this board, we got all this money. It is there, and one of these days, if you don't have it, you're going to pay a lot of money for it.
Yes. And the other thing I want to add to that, Pat, is our 2022 budget has a lot of risk to it in inflation. On the 12th, they came out with the Consumer Price Index. Inflation last year, just general CPI, was 7%.
Yeah.
When you look at the subcategories, trucks, 10, 11%. Just like Andy talked about with his purveyors, you know, we need to manage our vendors, not only to get better service and make sure the terms are correct about what they're providing to us, but try to lock in prices. I mean, frankly, that's the difficulty with, you know, our capital approval process. It's tough to either get bids or get people to lock in a price because they don't want to lock in and take the risk of inflation. So they kind of stall you to the very end when you absolutely need to sign.
Right.
And then it is what it is, and you have nowhere to go.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I think we've budgeted conservatively and appropriately for inflation, for the salary increases. You know, Andy talked about his staffing challenges. We have exactly the same challenges. So I think we need to be conservative and prepared for those kind of gotchas if and when they do arise. So I think we're on the right course. I didn't mean for this to be, rainbows and butterflies flying out my backside to say, but, 21 was a good year. So, okay. All right, Pat, thanks. Next slide, please, Shannon. Okay, I was asked to give an update on a project that frankly seems like it was a long time ago. If you recall, the Wellness Center roof was replaced, and it started in the 2019 budget. $300,000 was put in that budget, which then carried over into 2020, at which time the discussion was had, is it better to go with a metal roof or an asphalt roof? And I think everyone initially said, hey, a metal roof will last much longer than an asphalt shingle. So the board approved $482,000 for a standing seam metal roof. When they started work, there was due to some of the pool environment issues, some rust and peeling on the trusses and infrastructure. So another $117,000 was approved to take care of that. So all in all, that metal roof was budgeted at roughly $609,000. What we actually incurred along the way, we had some wind damage from a storm early on, which damaged the old roof, and we applied those insurance proceeds to the new roof. We went through solid construction for work. That, along with some other work, we stopped that project roughly at $376,000. I won't go into all the vendor issues, but lessons learned, I think, for significant projects for us, actively managing those projects on a daily basis is a key lesson learned there. On the asphalt shingle roof, we engaged a different vendor. The board approved $291,000 for that. We came a little bit under at $285,000. We spent about almost $37,000 in legal fees litigating the previous vendor. We did settle in mediation. We had some escrow put aside. So between the $202,000 that we had kind of sunk into the metal roof and $285,000 for the new shingle roof, we spent $487,000 on a new roof for the Wellness Center, not including some extra soffit fascia work and flat roof work that we did, versus the original budget of $304,000. So we did spend an additional $183,000 compared to the $300,000 of budget. Any questions on the Wellness Center roof?
So I think, I just want to reiterate that the primary purpose of bringing this up now is just to have this communication to the community, to let them know, okay, here's what actually happened from a financial standpoint, and just to be transparent. So that was the bottom line here. So thanks, Kevin.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions from the board? From the audience?
Well, not to give the audience or the people watching the video that we have not discussed this ad nauseum regarding issues that should not be discussed in public.
Yeah, this has taken a considerable amount of time on this board in 2021.
Yes.
Yes, it has. All right, thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks. Next slide, please, Shannon. Okay, I've got a few capital requests. This first one is, does not require board approval. It's more informational. It's a 2022 capital funding request. It's for a Kahiti remote response building, and it's basically to use the existing metal building near the Kahiti Golf Maintenance to improve as a remote response building, keeping basic emergency response equipment and supplies there to address emergencies in a more efficient way rather than multiple trips to the Public Works building. So the intent here is to put some Public Works inventory, like piping, some tools and equipment to prevent, by the time you go there and back, between Public Works, it's about an extra hour that they need to be able to respond more quickly. So the budgeted amount was $10,000. The requested amount is $10,000. The source of funds would be operating cash. Psac did recommend, I brought this up at the FAC on Friday, and no approval is needed. And it's multiple suppliers, as the Public Works crew is going to be improving that building with multiple small vendors. Next one, please. Next one also does not require any approval from the board. It's a 2022 capital project for a pole barn extension, and it's to expand storage at the Public Works facility to accommodate equipment, storage, and workspace. Caleb Morris is the manager. The budgeted amount was $25,000. The requested amount is $25,000. Again, Psac made the recommendation. FAC was not involved. And again, it's just multiple vendors to expand out that Public Works yard.
May I? Okay, at the Finance Advisory Committee, and you guys were there, I'm just bringing it up because their request was, and it's just for clarity, for communication, and for openness. The first one is for I don't know which one of you over there is controlling my ability to talk, but one of them is, they say this is the dark side of the room for the people in the audience. But anyway, the first one, the first one is for $10,000. The second one is $25,000. No issue, right? And finance didn't have an issue with it either. But what we're interested in is showing this to the board and the different departments. When Clayton comes up and says, I can put up a pole barn, or Golf says I can redo a bunker, and we're going to use our people. We're not asking you to capitalize it or put it in the cost. We're just wanting a parenthetical or an asterisk down there to say, this is going to cost me 20 hours. And so then the question can come up to Clayton or to Chris, where are you going to get the 20 hours? Well, I do it during this time of year, and I absorb the, that kind of thing. So we can start putting that on there? Because that's what they asked.
Yep.
So, and it's not going to make, to the audience, not going to make the cost go up. It's just an explanation of I'm doing this in-house, and as the manager, I can take care of it. So don't worry about it. But we would, as a board, worry about it if he said, I'm going to build a $10,000 pole barn, it's going to take me 80 hours. We're going to ask that question. Okay.
Yep.
Yep, okay, that's all I wanted, a yep.
Okay. Next slide, please, Shannon. So this next request does require a approval. It is for a mini excavator, and the request is to purchase equipment for the water and sewer maintenance team approved in the budget. If you recall, during the 2022 budget, the board approved Clayton to add some incremental staff to the water and sewer department to bring some of the work currently outsourced to a vendor in-house. Chad Johnson is the manager of that area. They had budgeted $118,000 for a backhoe, and they decided a mini excavator would work better. So the request is for a lesser amount at $96,000. This would come out of the water and sewer reserve funds. It did get Psac recommendation and FAC recommendation. The justification, it's smaller equipment, but it has rubber tracks, and the smaller size will fit better for a lot of the work that they're doing. Now that the village is growing, homes are very close together, and when they need to work in those right-of-ways and in common areas, that mini-X will be less damaging to villagers' yards and those areas. So the request is for Vermeer. It's actually the more expensive of the three bids. And the question came up in FAC, why would you do that? And the answer to that is Vermeer's equipment, it's a little bit of apples and oranges on some of this on the bids. They try to get them as close as possible. But that Vermeer system, that equipment is much more appropriate for future needs. So as Clayton continues to look at that water and sewer, what we outsource versus what we do in-house, that equipment would last longer than the other two.
Okay, I'll bite. Clayton, what are future needs that we have to pay for the highest bid?
Well, at some point, and that's fine, that's fine. At some point, we may want to bring the sewer tank installation in-house. That would be a huge asset to have this piece of equipment, because it has wet lines on it where we could add a hammer to hammer rock if we needed to use it digging holes. It has a longer reach. All of this is standard equipment. Now, all three met our bid request. It's just standard equipment. There's so much more standard equipment on the Vermeer as far as in dig reach, thumb on the boom and stuff like that. So looking into the future, if we decided we were going to bring in-house tank installation in, the contractor machinery machine and the Bobcat machine would not do what we'd want to. And the Vermeer would.
So, do I have a motion to purchase the Vermeer mini excavator at $96,655 with funding to come from the Water and Sewer Reserve Fund? Bob made the motion. And Sue second. Any discussion from the board? From the visitors? Take a vote. All in favor? 7-0.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Shannon. All right, this next request, again, it's the 2022 capital project funding request. It's for the water replacement program. I know it's been in place at least the 3 years that I've been here. We continually replace water meters in the village. The budget is to replace approximately 640 meters, or roughly 10%. That was increased, I think, last year. Before we were running, I want to say about 7% replacement. The replacement would go from the mechanical meters, which seem to be failing, to an ultrasonic meter. It has obviously less moving mechanical parts. We're experiencing a lot of meter failure, particularly up in Kahiti. I think between the larger home sizes and irrigation, the mechanics in those meters are not lasting as long as they should have. So the new ultrasonic meters have been built in to both this water meter replacement as well as new homes going in the village. Chad Johnson is the manager. The budgeted amount is $233,400. He's requesting that full amount to do as many meters as possible. The Water and Sewer Reserve Fund would be the source of funds. Psac and FAC both approve or recommended. And this would all integrate in. It's single source. We've started already using these set meters. In what we've, when we had meter failures so far. It integrates well with the Mission Control, which is the online system that Chad and his folks use to kind of monitor any issues in the village. So the bid is from Utility Solutions and Automation, and the request is to approve the water meter replacement at $233,400 with funding from the Water and Sewer Reserve Fund.
Kevin, are these meters also remotely read?
Correct. Yes, they are. Thank you for pointing that out.
So that's going to eliminate a meter reader also.
Down the road, I think Clayton was asked that question at Friday's FAC. With a lot of the meters failing, obviously he can take those resources, keep them busy here in the village, on the Loudon side, and save sending meter readers out to Kahiti. I think his plan is try to work your way through Kahiti and then get to the village and kind of start from the south and work your way through. And what's interesting to note, that's almost the exact investment that, like, when Jeff Gagley and folks kind of put in those meters originally. So they tend to be failing kind of chronologically, if that makes sense. So, yes, I think he can reduce the readers, meter readers in the future. It's not built into the 2022 budget for a reduction, though.
So as a point of clarification, if I may, I think that if I understood Clayton correctly when we talked about this, is that the current ones we have, the majority of them are radio frequency. And so when they go out to check them, they can still stay in their truck, but they physically have to drive by every house to get the reading. Whereas these, they'll be able to get it from the office.
Correct.
So that's the major difference as I understand it, which is a big advantage.
Yes.
Well, if I can,
But at the rate we're replacing them, that's gonna take years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trust me, if you'd say triple that, I'm sure he would find a way to accelerate that meter replacement, because those set meters have a technology that's got a lot of interesting factors to it. You could eventually incorporate it into a front end for the villagers to look at their own usage, and it gets extremely specific, where you could tell at your house, Marty, if there's like a teaspoon of water being leaked out of the system. It's that precise.
Yeah.
And I think Madisonville, and there's a lot of different local communities that are all moving towards that electronic meter.
So, and Clayton, I guess this is for you. So then, okay, so we're doing like 300 new homes a year at this point. Are these what's getting put in the new homes?
Yes, the new homes will be getting those also.
Okay, great.
Well, and they're paying for them.
Correct.
That's okay.
But as far as your adoption question, Rick, you would have 640 in replacements plus 300 in new builds.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're doing probably closer to 1,000.
Good. Can I have a motion?
motion. Second.
Pat? Okay. John made the motion to purchase water meter replacements at $233,400 with funding from Water and Sewer Reserve Fund, and Pat seconded. Any other discussion on the board? Visitors? Tom?
They will, Tom. These will alert us if we have a leak on those meters and stuff also. But on an old mechanical read meter, they won't read down really low decimal points. But these will read entire water flow through that meter. So with the old mechanical meters, we're losing a lot of water just going through the meter going to a house. But this will catch every single ounce of water that goes through it.
Cap?
Water bills go up.
If I remember correctly, when we went through this a couple of years ago, Jeff had a plan over a period of time to replace them. What I'm wondering is if these are this sensitive and that accurate, and they can be read from my office rather than, has anybody, and Kevin, this would, I guess would fall in your lap, done a financial analysis that said, could we maybe use some of the money that we now have, in the reserves to do these on a much more rapid rate and then save, i.e. the money that we're losing on water that we don't get paid for, as well as not having to have readers that drive by to read our meters. So I'm just thinking a financial analysis might demonstrate that there could be a good payback as well as a savings.
Yeah, agree 100%, Cap. What I would suggest is that we, since we've got a few of these already installed, try to quantify what that revenue capture is on the new meters, and then I could certainly extrapolate that into the remaining parts of the village. But I'd like to get some data points first, because at this point I would be kind of speculating on interest. There's write-ups about the set system and what they typically will recover in revenue, but I'd like to kind of quantify it first. So I'll,
Good point, those, Cap.
yeah.
Okay, let's take it to a vote. All in favor? Looks like 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, this next request, it's for our HVAC service contract. It's to extend the new contract, basically, that we rewrote with Psac last year. It's with Interstate Mechanical. They provide monthly maintenance and filter changes. They've been a good partner, I think, on our HVAC systems. This is not HVAC replacements. We budget that separately, and we usually account for 2 HVAC units a year to go out. We don't know where they're going to go out. So Chad is the manager. The budgeted amount is $80,000. The requested amount is $78,600. It would come out of operating cash. Psac did make the recommendation. It did get recommended by Hvac. And to put it in perspective, the price increase of 5% over the current contract is due to roughly 2 new additional units being added to the contract. We've got 89 HVAC units in total in the system throughout the village. And again, the request is to approve the HVAC service contract with Interstate Mechanical.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the HVAC service contract with Interstate Mechanical for $78,600 out of operating cash?
So moved.
Seconded by Rick. Any discussion from the board?
Yeah, I have a question. Does this include the HVAC units on the new commercial center?
They do not. I'm working with Mitzi and with Beth.
Okay.
The leases that we took over are triple net leases.
I know that.
So the tenants are, well, they don't, but the tenants are responsible for the HVAC and roofing systems. And the question has been raised, is it better to have the POA manage that maintenance and those units through our contract with Interstate Mechanical and what we do for all of our other buildings? Or is it better to put that into, on the tenant? And I think the timing of that, we just took over those leases. So I would say when that lease renewal comes through, Beth will have a bigger relationship with those tenants, and we can kind of figure out what works best. But at this point, to change that, Rick, I think we would have to amend all the lease agreements, and I don't know if that's something we want to do at this point.
Okay. Any other discussion among the board? The audience? Okay, let's take it to a vote. All in favor? 7-0.
Thank you. This next request is to purchase equipment. It's a leaf collector in Public Works, and it's to replace the existing Hvac machine. That current machine is 5 years old and failing. This new machine picks up leaves and has a dump bed for more efficiency. So if you recall, we did purchase the brush truck, which has worked well. They tow behind the leaf vacuum today. This is more integrated where the leaf basically gets dumped instead of using 2 trucks in tandem to go to the dump. They can use just one machine, so there's efficiencies there. Caleb Morris is the manager. The budgeted amount was $62,500. The requested amount is a little bit higher at $67,224. This would come out of operating cash. FAC did recommend, and project justification is have the ability to purchase a 2021 model and avoid a $10,000 increase for 2022 prices. And I'll let Clayton speak a little bit. It will save approximately $8,000 a month in efficiencies during leaf pickup season. Joe Johnson Equipment is the bid. And Clayton, do you want to say a little bit about those efficiencies?
Yes, sir. Right now, currently with a leaf picking up crew, we use 2 dump trucks with boxes on those, 4 employees, and a leaf vac. So you go out, you load 1 truck with leaves, he goes to the dump, while the other 3 is loading the truck. So you take 5 trips to the dump daily. So that's an hour to the dump and back. So with this machine, we'll eliminate, this crew will go down to 3 people. So you'll eliminate 1 truck that we can have doing something else. And that 1 employee will be doing another job. So that crew will save approximately $8,000 a month in usage of the truck and an employee and the wasted time of 4 trips to the dump. So instead of going 5 times the dump, this will hold a day's load of material. So they'll go to the dump once a day instead of 5 times a day. So when you figure up hourly rates, cost of gas, and the cost of a truck, that's about $8,000 a month.
And do you then, because I know you've got multiples of this, and as I recall in the Finance Advisory Committee meeting, there were a couple of them that are on their last legs, so you're gonna either strip them or sell them. And then there's a couple that, or 1, I think, was it, that you can keep?
Yes, we have 4, but these machines are really worn out. 2 of them was bought in 17, and the other 2 are a lot older than that. I would, you know, they were probably 10 years old before.
Sure, I got that part.
So we'll keep 2.
Okay.
We'll try to keep the 2 best ones and sell 2 of them.
And then why are you keeping the 2?
Because we run 3 crews. To complete Delico Village, to keep it covered up and collect all the village in 1 month, we put a crew in Kahiti and work this way. We put a crew in Kahiti and work toward Tokwa. And we have a crew that just concentrates on Tokwa, picking up leaves.
All right.
So.
And this is another area that, you know, we talk about growth in the village.
Yeah.
The more homes that we have in the village, the more leaf pickup there is, because before, on common property or on undeveloped land, we just kind of let the leaves rot.
I thought it was what Winston said, those trees are just getting bigger. But you're telling me there's more people. That makes more sense. It's a combination of the 2, right?
It is.
All right, can I have a motion to approve the purchase of a leaf collector at $67,224 with funding from operating cash? Rick and John. Any more? Yeah, sorry, I'm looking that way. Any more discussion from the board? Do I have a question?
I have one question. You know, I obviously see this as single source. Is this the only people that have this equipment?
It was the only place that had the 2021 left that we could get at this price.
Okay.
Thank you, that was my question as well. Any questions from the audience? Okay, let's take it to a vote. All in favor? 7-0.
Thank you.
Is that a timer over there? No. I'm teasing.
Is it my imagination, or does it seem they're getting into this game faster this year than years past?
Well, that's somewhat intentional, because even though the board may approve this, I mean, in cases like that where Clayton has a vendor kind of lined up with equipment, but some of it, you know, I think it's everyone's concern that you'll approve it in January and we'll get going in May.
Well, and in fact, the board has been critical at our slow pace in the past. So I actually laud them for doing this.
Okay. This next request is actually a carryover from 2021 into 2022. It's for 2 heavy-duty utility vehicles. One is for Tenasseee Golf Maintenance. The other is for Kahiti Golf Maintenance. The managers are Wells McClure, Jordan Clark, and obviously Chris Sykes. The budget amount was $64,000. The requested amount is for $58,638. Source of funds would be operating cash. I think both the GAC and I know the FAC on Friday did recommend. The current units are both 2001 models with over 3,500 hours on them and require constant maintenance to keep operational. I think on Friday it was asked, what makes these different than like a normal Gator? And obviously they can carry much heavier load. They've got a bed that'll go up and dump. This equipment would actually come in handy for, obviously, the Kahiti bunker renovation, which I'll be requesting in a minute. The low bid is from Greenville Turf, and again, the amount is $58,638.
Do I have a motion? To approve the request for purchase and funding of 2 new heavy-duty utility vehicles for Tenasseee and Kahiti from operating cash. Made by Sue, seconded by Bob. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. It says low bid from Greenville Turf. Were there other bids? Well, that would be my question. This is in Clayton's.
Lads had a Cushman for $33,000 each, and Smith Turf and Irrigation had a Workman for $31,000, call it $31,500 each.
Okay, so there were 3 bids.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Then how come this one's called low bid at 58? Am I? Oh, it's for 2, got it.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
Any other questions or comments from the audience? Okay, take it to a bid, to a vote. All in favor? Against? 6-1. John was against.
Steve was against, I believe.
No.
Steve, were
Can you
you
hear me?
for or against?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Motion passed 7-0.
All right, may the minutes reflect 7-0. Okay, the next request is for I'm out of my league here, T62 T4 Bobcat compact track loader for golf maintenance. The budgeted amount was $50,000. The requested amount is $54,222. Source of funds would be operating cash. FAC did recommend this on Friday. This piece of equipment would be used in that bunker back 9 renovation. On the front 9, it costs roughly $11,000 to rent that same piece of equipment. TOCWA's scheduled 23 enhanced practice facility renovation is another future use, future T-box expansion, sod work, etc. The Bobcat will be shared by all 3 courses and will save on rental costs over the coming years. They'll also aid in everyday maintenance activities such as tree work, sand placement for drill and fill, and aerification. The request is for $54,222 for a used 2020 model with 200 hours on it. The low bid is from Bobcat of Knoxville. And I'll have to go through my detail for the other bids. But the request would be for the purchase and funding from operating cash. of a Bobcat compact track loader.
Okay, without repeating that, do I have a motion?
Second.
By John, seconded by Pat. I will read it just to be sure it's correct in the minutes. But basically to approve a request to purchase a T62 T4 Bobcat compact track loader for golf maintenance from operating cash. Any discussion?
Question, and it was asked in the Finance Advisory, and I think it's a very valid question. You're using it between 3 courses. Do you have a trailer? Or you got to go buy a trailer to move a great big piece of equipment?
I think they answered that.
Yeah, they
That they
did.
do have a
I
trailer.
just wanted to hear somebody other than me answer it.
Adam, you want to say yeah?
Okay.
Did I get a motion and second on that from somebody? Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to be sure.
It was John and I.
All right,
It was
John.
the dark side.
We beat the
All right.
light side.
So this is to save on rental costs, and I see the 11,000 from the front bunker renovation from last year. But what other rental costs do we think we'll save per year?
Well, they went into this in the meeting, and I think they reviewed it at the Golf Advisory Committee. Is every year you're having this drill and fill, and you're having this bunker, you're having the green aeration. That's basically twice a year. One is severe, one is non-severe. Both times you have to move huge amounts of sand from the delivery to, and they have to rent the piece of equipment to do that, and that's
So
normally
that's what I'm
a
asking, is
3-week
how much is that going to save us on an annual
That's
basis?
normally a 3-week process, so you're looking at 11 grand there, and then you're looking at 11 grand again. So now you're already up to 33 grand, and then you have extraneous or incidentals, moving trees, moving dirt, moving sod, all of these kind of things, and what they've come
And
up
so
with.
every time you do that, you currently rent, is that
Yeah.
true? Okay, I understand that.
Right.
And Rick, I think what you bring up, FAC brought it up on Friday as well. In all of these approval processes, I think we need to create a stronger linkage between the request and either the current year budget, if we go through a forecasting process, but certainly in the next year budget. So when we walk year to year say there's an increase in a rental expense for golf, we need to be able to demonstrate that we've reflected those savings and then what's offsetting it perhaps to make it go up net.
I agree.
Yeah, because basically you're calculating how many years to pay off based on, right? So that is good information to know. And then the other thing would be, what's the expected life of this piece of equipment? Because it already has 200 hours on it. I mean, it's not new. Any other questions or comments from the board? The audience? Cap?
Keep bringing up stuff from the past. A few years ago, we put in place with Parker Owen, he led the charge on that anything we were justifying on a cost savings, that we would do a payback and an ROI, return on investment. Because you would have the capital investment, you would have how much you were going to save, and then you would do the financial analysis, demonstrating what the payback would be and what the ROI would be. Now it seems like we're starting to get into, we just mentioned there's a cost savings, but we don't really go through this whole process. So hopefully the board will continue to fall back to what we once did, and because I think it's good practice.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, if you're going to say it's for cost savings, then you got to prove it. You know, you got to tell me how long it's going to last and what the payback is and what the return on investment is. These don't tell me that.
Okay, we ready to vote? All in favor? 7-0, it passes.
Thank you. This next request is for the Kahiti, back nine bunker renovation. The budget amount is 300,000, the requested amount is 300,000. Source of funds would be, out of the current year reserve fund that we talked about, a little bit different structure year over year. The bunkers at Kahiti, this is really just to finish, kind of what we started, last year. Recommend using, a little bit of everything who's performed work at a high level in the village and previous golf course projects. Again, this is the golf crew basically tackling this as they can, schedule permitting, doing a lot of it in-house. The FAC did recommend this. They also wanted to make sure we verify, and this is what Pat brought up, you know, a lot of this is internal labor that we're using. We don't capitalize internal labor, we never have, but we're gonna footnote that. So obviously, you know, we'll kind of work through that. The request would be to approve the purchase and funding from current year reserves for the Kahiti back nine bunker.
So we have a motion from Bob to approve the request for purchase and funding of, or purchasing the,
No, I got it. My
it's a
hand
funding
was up.
request for the back nine bunker renovations at Kahiti for $300,000.
And I was the second. Bob
Second
was, and
by
I got
Pat.
the second, okay.
Right, it's just a continuation of this last
You
year.
ready for comments?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now again, I'm back up on my high horse, as Bruce Johnson used to say. And I like it up there, and I like falling off. But here's the issue. This is $300,000. Bob made the motion. I second it. I'm going to vote yes on this. This is something that will enhance our playability of our golf courses. Now, we talk about it's a safety issue, and I've challenged to go back and find me the lady or gentleman that was injured falling down in a sandy bunker, and so far we haven't come up with one. But I agree, it could happen. My point is that I've been arguing for putting in additional docks since 2018, 19, finally got one in 20, putting another one in here, and those doggone docks generate revenue. Now, here's the question I asked last year. How much revenue is that 300,000 going to generate? Turn on your mic.
It's gonna save you a lot of money on maintenance.
Okay, then tell
Right
me
now.
how much it's going to save.
Well, it's gonna save you, the back nine bunkers, right now, if it rains, practically the whole
All I'm
crew-
doing is looking for a dollar
I
amount.
can't give you a dollar amount, but I
Well,
can tell you.
nobody has, and that's my point. You're going to spend $300,000 on something that's going to enhance, and I am for it, and I'm going to vote yes. But you are telling me that for some reason, in the background in this POA or Stafford Village, until I think in the budget of last year, November 21, December 2021, when we voted, finally enough people in this village woke up and said, holy cow, there's 182 people wanting to pay money to lease a slip. And we've deferred this for 2.5 years. I am for this, but it does not generate a dime, and boat slips do.
Right, but I want to
Yeah,
build
but
on.
it will save cost. You know, the question is
I
how much?
understand that.
The cost that's saved is, number one, a lot of the bunkers are going away, so there's no maintenance. Number two, the bunkers that are being installed have less maintenance.
$300,000 a year, right?
Well, you look at the payback, like on any other investment.
Correct.
Well, and to Pat's point, my thought is, hey, if we can put in slips faster, we can recommend it. Especially since they have a payback
But
and there's a demand.
But we come to, and again, this board, we come to the end of the year, and I'm going to recommend again, more boat slips, this budget season for 2022, and we're going to, for some reason, I would stand up and do a demonstration right there, and the demonstration looks like me dragging my right leg from there all the way to there. For some reason, we're dragging and saying, oh, I really don't want to, but I know we do, but I want to.
So I don't know, from my perspective, Pat, I don't know that the board has ever said, don't build docks faster. We've approved what's been recommended.
It was requested in 18, it went below the line. 19, below the line. 20 finally faced up when the Marine Advisory Committee and myself and the boaters in the community are saying, you're going to go from a waiting list of 0 to 50 to 100. We've been predicting this within 5% error rate for the last 3 to 5 years, and nobody's been buying it. And I didn't want to get off on this. My point, though, I did. My point,
Yes, you
I'm
did.
on my high horse. I'm on my high horse, is that we've got an amenity that is self-funded and self-paying for, and we, this board, have got an opportunity to go to this community and say, when an amenity is self-funding, we don't have to go up in rates, and they can also self-fund and pay for a new, bigger, better amenity. And that's what they're in the position to do. And these are the 7 people that are saying, I don't want to. Or put it, you put it below the line, you were there.
That's a total mischaracterization of what the board discussed.
Didn't you, Cap? 2
Okay,
years running.
All right, I think that.
Okay, I'm done.
No.
Sorry, I apologize.
I think it's a good point, and I think that if we should be putting in more docks, which I think we should be, then we should be raising that issue, even if it's not in the budget. We can do that.
No, you can't. But here goes the point. You did,
God.
You did Tokel for $1 million. We did. We then did Tenasseee for $250,000. Tenasseee for $250,000. Tenasseee for what was the third year? A couple of hundred, 175, something like that. And then we did Kahiti for $300. Now we're doing Kahiti, so we're well over $2.5 million in bunkers, and we're still 182 people because we can't put in a dock.
We don't have 182 dock opportunities in the village right now. We maybe have another 60 to 80, period.
You've got 182 people on the wait list.
But I'm telling you, the TVA allotment for Delico Village isn't anywhere near that number.
So
And we're
can
not
we-
going to build the dock for every person in the village.
No, nobody's saying that.
So,
Nobody said
so
that.
Pat, it looks to me like you're on the agenda in 1.5 agenda items for docks. Perhaps we could move this discussion there.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about
And finish
the
the vote
CCI
on
docks.
the 300,000 for Kahiti.
No, that's fine. Go ahead. No, I'm gonna vote for this.
No,
It's-
So
it's a
back to
good
the
deal.
bunker renovation, I do want to build on what Bob said. The reshaping around the greens, I think what people forget, those courses are right next to the lake, and it's basically a large leach field for all of the water runoff in the whole village. So when you get severe rain, those bunkers wash out, and we have to replace sand, we have to go through rebuilding those bunkers to a decent level. I think the Kahiti front nine showed what a good job that the team did during all the storms that we recently had, because they did not have washout and issues. So I think we would save not only on rental equipment, but also sand. You know, it's part of maintaining the course, just like drill and fill and aeration. Are we saving money? Yeah, you're not having to replace, turf. But, we could quantify certainly what we would save in sand and rentals for this kind of maintenance project.
No doubt
Okay.
about it.
Any other comments on the Kahiti bunker renovation from the audience?
So the savings is $32,000 a year, so it's a 10-year payback.
Okay, calling for a vote. All in favor? All in favor, that's, you in a favor? All right, 7-0.
You gotta be quick on the draw there,
He's
John.
taunting me over there. Okay, let's move on.
Okay, this next item, I debated about it. It technically does, per our purchasing policy, does not need board approval. It's not a maintenance project and it's not a capital item.
But it is a
obviously,
board objective.
it's a board objective and it's significant to the community. So the funding request is to engage a third-party reserve specialist to determine the 2022 and long-term requirements of the POA reserve funding for future repairs, maintenance, and amenities. The budget amount is $35,000. The requested amount was $28,350. We may go over a little bit depending on how that vendor treats travel to here. The source of funds would be operating cash. Obviously, the FAC, since they're going to be involved in this study with me, recommended to move forward. And I think we all know the project justification, as we've talked about this reserve study extensively this last year. There were 5 bids when this formally went out as an RFP. Facility Advisors International is the low bid, but more importantly, I think that they truly are a POA-focused firm. They're not just an engineering firm. They specialize in reserve studies like we're interested in. They would give us the capability to update that study every single year. It's a moving target. If we add assets, that reserve study needs to get updated. We sell assets, the reserve study needs to get updated. So that's going to be a living, breathing target every single year. So the request is to approve the project, and I believe FAI could get started in the early May timeframe. So the intent is to have that study done before we go into the 2023 budgeting process in the fall.
Okay. Since Steve has been pushing this, I'll give him the opportunity to make the motion. Looks like he put his hand up.
Can you hear me?
So
Can you hear me?
I think he wants to talk. Well, let's get a motion on the table first, and then we'll take discussion. So, did you want to make the motion, Steve?
Yeah, I'll make the motion if you can hear me.
Yes. Okay. Steve made the motion to approve funding of a reserve study for $28,350 from FAI. Do I have a second? Pat? Any discussion?
Could I ask a person in the audience, because, and I don't know, John, would you be willing to talk? And if you don't want to, just say no. Because John was extensively involved in doing the research, and if you would have anything that you would like to add, I would appreciate it.
Well, I don't know if I can add a lot more to the discussion that's already been had, but this is, I think, a critical need. As we talked earlier about, we've got X number of millions in the bank. Question is, how much do we need? Is it 5 times that much, or are we at the target? We have no idea. And we've all kind of gone around in circles trying to do some back-of-the-napkin calculations, but until you get this objective third-party advice that they do this for a living, as their name implies, internationally, you really don't know for sure what that target should be. So I did this, I was on the board my last POA. First year out of the gate, we had one of these done. In fact, we used Ray Engineering, and that was our roadmap of our reserve balance year after year, and it met all of our needs during that time. So I think it's a critical need.
Thanks.
Any other comments from the board?
Not I.
From the audience? I'll call for a vote. All in favor? 7-0.
Thank you. Don't expire till after the vote. I'm joking. Okay, Pat, do you want to talk about this one, or want me to take it? The request is for Kahiti dock expansion. It's to expand 32 slips at the Kahiti docks to meet obviously ongoing demand. Chad Johnson is the manager. The budgeted amount is $244,800. The requested amount is for $262,935, so a little bit higher. Short-term reserve funds would be used for funding. The FAC did make the recommendation to move forward. The Marine Advisory Committee, I think, is also, has recommended this. Floating dock manufacturer, who is the same manufacturer that did the Tenacity docks, basically same configuration. Funderburk is the electrical company that we use for a lot of our power pedestals. So the requested amount is $262,935 with funding from short-term reserves.
Can I ask, what are short-term reserves?
Well, remember, we kind of tried to simplify all of our reserves. We, rather than have 7, we kept the water and sewer reserve fund, since that's funded solely from water and sewer users. We have long-term capital, which we kind of referred to in the budget as do not touch, and that's kind of predicated on the reserve study. And then all the budgeted capital, primarily the large capital items, would come out of what I term that short-term reserve funds.
Okay, because I'm just looking at the
I have to change the
balance sheet.
I've got to reformat all of the reports. I've got to take,
Okay.
because we reconcile every single reserve account that's out there. So I've got to change the accounting to kind of match what we did in the budget. And I've done that on a lot of different fronts, but
Okay.
that's what that is.
All right, thanks. So I'm asking for a motion to approve the purchase of Kahiti Dock expansion for $262,935. Bob made the motion. Do I have a second? John, any discussion from the board?
This is
Question.
actually 36. Our public works guys go out and buy a 32 slip dock, put 2 on the front end at the walkway by extending it, and then 2 on the end. So we buy 32, at least 36.
That's
Hooray.
great. I like it.
Can you hear me?
Steve. Steve is up.
What about parking? We got enough parking to handle all these additional slips?
Yeah, Kahiti, that's why it's going in there.
So we're good.
Yes.
And Clayton, do you know the timing that Chad, if we were to order today, when would those docks be here?
Well, when we started talking, it was July, so we're probably closer to fall now, you know, kind of like it was this year. That's why we're trying to get an early jump on it, so we'll know tomorrow when we reach out to them and tell them we're ready to go, so.
So we have all the approvals, then TVA and everything?
Yes, sir, those have been approved.
They started that back in November. When the board voted budget is approved, they started work on this.
That's good. Any other comments on the board from the audience? Okay, call for a vote. All in favor? 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, I'll walk quickly through this eye chart here. Basically, that is the running total of all of our 2021 capital that was budgeted and authorized. Obviously, I've got about $1 million left in spend to accommodate in our cash flow when that does come through. So we've got a few items that we're still working through, but I just wanted to report kind of a complete 2021 list. Next slide, please, Shannon. This is more a condensed version of that. If you recall, almost $3 million in little over $3 million in capital was approved. We've spent just $2.2 million. We had $255,000 in capital that I walked through in previous board meetings that we are not going to be requesting. And then I carried forward in the 2022 budget $536,000, some of which we just talked about, the Tenacity heavy-duty vehicles, the Chota Fitness pool deck refinishing, pool gate security, the water storage tank mixer and water system improvements. We talked about that extensively, along with the 2022 budget of additional water system improvements. Some variable frequency drives for the main lift station pump would carry over. Andy and Mitzi, I think, talked about some of the Kahiti kitchen equipment Tenacity replacement hoods, 5,000 for practice design for golf, and then lift station pumps at Kahiti, or at Coyote and Tokwa, brings out the remainder. So to everyone's point about ordering, a little bit behind on capital spend, but trying to get an early start to 2022.
Steve?
Yes, Steve?
I don't see the spin cycles as approved for the 2022 capital.
Yeah, Mitzi brought that up because one of the, I think Winston has it as a goal or objective, is to gate out the 2022 capital by month. I gave that to Mitzi, and she shared that with all the managers to update at our staff meeting yesterday. And because we approved it in 2021, I forgot to add that to the list. So Simon was out with illness, but I think he's moving forward with that racquetball conversion for spin cycles, and I'll add that for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I think that's the last slide, Shannon, right? Cash flow. Again, I'll be brief with this. I talked about it at the beginning. Our net income, most months this schedule doesn't mean much to folks, but this last schedule I think is telling for our year. That projection is actually our year-end balance sheet. So the net income, 5.6 million. Depreciation, a little bit lighter than budgeted because of timing. Came in at 1.8 million. Our CapEx was 8,357,000, which I think that does break a record. But I'm including the 5.3 million of Cooper investment that we made. When we leased our golf carts, the accounting lease pronouncements has me carry a golf cart right of use asset and a corresponding liability. And then obviously the CapEx that I just talked about rounds out that 8.3 million. I talked about the adjustment that I need to make for the carryover capital. That went into the 2022 budget. So we had budgeted net cash flow, excluding working capital, to use cash of 1.2 million in the budget. We've only used 406,000 of that. We had budgeted a drawdown of our reserves of $63,000 in our budget. We actually built that up 4.5 million. New bank financing, we didn't anticipate, obviously, the Cooper opportunity. So that is a variance in there of 3.975 for the debt. And then the remaining is the golf cart lease liability. We did obviously expect to pay down debt payments to principal of 318,000. We actually did that and then some. The payoff of the Tokwa Clubhouse debt was a little over 1.1 million. And then some small cash timing adjustments and changes to working capital show that in the budget we expected to be down in operating cash 1.5 million, and we were only down 500,000 year over year. Quite a year.
Yes, quite a year.
Any questions?
All right. Any questions for Kevin? From the audience? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Pat, you are up.
So I'm going to set a world record here. I'm going to review the community, my personal world record, community docs that we took over in the CCI land acquisition. First of all, apologies from the POA, from the board. We were given information regarding the Cooper docks. We were told they were a certain size. The idea was the Cooper docks will be charged lease fees at the same comparable fees the rest of the POA is. We were told they were 11 by 24. We sent out the rates for 11 by 24 to the slip holders. They're actually 10 by 20. So they were looking at a 20 to 30% increase when we actually only went up 3%. Got a little irate that went, and rightly so. There were some phone calls. And part of that also is that we had that issue going on and then absorbing those docks. And we talked about it in various board meetings. We sent out in the lease agreements on the bottom line, it said that there were upgrades going to take place, but we weren't specific. But what the Marine Advisory Committee, Public Works, reviewing this with the docks, last year worked with Kevin and Finance regarding insurance, because our insurance, you recall, changed. Docks aren't just grouped in with Delico Village, they now are standalone, so they went up a little bit. But overall, our Delico Village rates went down, and part of that was the reason. But after Jerry is gone too, Jerry and his folks came over on a casual visit to all of our docks, every one of them, and inspected the docks and did not tell Delico Village that you had to have fire extinguishers, because Tennessee state law says you can use this fire extinguisher on the boat. But now if you have a fire on a dock or a boat, now you're going to be running to boats under covers. So what the Marine Advisory Committee did and spent was they put a big industrial fire extinguisher every 70 feet on all of our docks. Cooper docks will have the same upgrade. And that will be done as soon as they start in on, well, probably one of the first things they do for safety. Also, the Cooper docks will be upgraded for the keys and the security gates that'll be standardized across the village. And the discussion that we had Monday at the Marine Advisory Committee, they're very much concerned on the lighting, because when the docks change lighting, you're not only affecting the dock owner, but you're affecting the neighbors like John around those docks. So the dock owners, slip leasees, would love to have bright floodlights, but you can't. But you need a bright enough light for a security camera to pick up an image in the darkest part of the day. So you have to do these studies, and with the CCI docks, their pedestals are about waist high with those small lights on them rather than the tall treetop lights. So they're looking into that. They're reaching out to the Townhouse Association, trying to find out if there's a dock captain or somebody that's willing to work with the Marina Advisory Committee, Public Works, to determine the lumens and the size and the placement of these lights. There are other general repairs that will be done like we do on all docks with the rub rails and walking paths, making sure there aren't trip hazards. So even though your rates on the Cooper docks have gone up, because they were cheaper, and then you got a 3% increase, we have an awful lot of upgrades that we're planning on putting onto those docks to bring them up to standard as soon as we can. Couple of things in leaving that. With all docks, there is a move list, general information, move list at Delico Village, that you have to get your name on this move list. If you were on the old move list, you have to move to this new move list. This is all boats and docks. You have to do that by January 31st. There will be an email going out from the ACC folks that are explaining that you need to get this upgraded. If you don't, your name will be removed from the move list. All right? Yeah, you will be removed. All right, one other reminder. We are a thrifty community, and the contract that we signed to lease Delico Village slip says that we had until January 15th to pay the standard rate for your slips. If you have not paid by January 15th, which this is a couple of days late, you're now into a service charge fee. So I would suggest, to keep that to a minimum, go to the ACC office as quick as you can and pay that slip fee for the coming year. Otherwise, it compounds until it gets to 30 days, and then we send you a letter. And 60 days, we do something else, and 90 days, we do terrible things. So please go down and get this done as soon as you can. Again, you say, oh, Pat White just said we're going to do terrible things. There's 182 people sitting out there waiting on your slip. They want it bad. Okay? That's what I got. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you. Any questions for Pat from the audience? All right, thank you. Any others from the board? Seeing none, any others from the audience? Yes, ma'am, we have one. Yes.
You gotta use the mic.
I will keep you more than three minutes. My name is Cheryl Payton. My husband and I have lived in the village since 2003. This is the first time I've come before you with any complaints, so that says something. I was referred here by the ACC as you're the policy-making body, and thank you for the opportunity. I know that many Delico residents, like me, have called the POA to complain about a neighbor's political flag or banner, and we're told that the POA doesn't do anything about flags. I'd like to offer some reasons why you should, supported by state laws and the ACC Blue Book regulations, and as they say, I'll be brief. As you know, in 2019, the Tennessee legislature passed 2 bills that gave rights to homeowners in POA-controlled communities or governed communities for certain political expressions that might not have been allowed because POAs, of course, are private entities and not restricted by the First Amendment. Tennessee Code Title 62-27602 grants these homeowners the right to display 2 kinds of flags, the American flag and any one of the official military service flags. And in that law, they grant the HOA or POA the right to restrict the manner of display, size, location, etc. No right was given to display political flags. The second law is Title 2-7-43, commonly known as the Freedom of Speech Act. That gives POA residents the right to display political campaign posters up to 60 days prior to an election and 1 day after. Again, they recognize that the POA has the right and the duty to regulate the display. And in the village, of course, it's not to exceed 3 square feet, low to the ground, one sign. I know that there's an issue about the definition, well, what's a sign? The ACC Blue Book accommodates us on page 42 under section E on signs. They define it expansively, putting the word in quotes so we understand that they're talking about more than a 2-dimensional piece of cardboard. They say, and I'll quote, any identification, description, illustration, or device which is visible from any public place or, if located on private property, is exposed to the public, which directs attention to a product, service, institution, business, or solicitation. As a side note, dictionary definition of a device is a thing manufactured for a specific purpose, which to the reasonable man would include political flags and banners. Political flags are not listed where they have what temporary signs are allowed in the village. They are not listed. For instance, garage sale, for sale sign, and so on, that are included as acceptable. The statement of purpose of the regulations in the Blue Book, to paraphrase, is to preserve and maintain the ambiance and character of the neighborhoods, and that protects and enhances property values. For that reason, there are very few accessory items that are allowed to be displayed in our front yards, for good reason. Bird baths, arbors, etc. It's the reason why many people buy in planned communities. Relative to our population, there's a small minority of residents who do display these flags and banners. I have some photograph there. But In all cases, they destroy the harmony of the neighborhoods that they're in. I believe the POA wants to promote peace and tranquility and good feelings among neighbors, particularly in this election year when there's so much political divide. In conclusion, since political flags are not protected by law, they're not approved by the ACC, they're divisive, and most people object to them, I urge you to disallow them and ask the ones now displayed to be taken down. Thank you.
Thank you. We will take it under advisement.
Thank you. Just press.
Yes. Is there any other, others from the audience? All right, with that, can I have a motion to adjourn? Adjourn.
See ya.
4:30.